Hey everybody, this is Jason with the Landlord Launch. Today we are going to be getting into our application screening process, specifically the steps that we're going to take to screen an application that we've received. So in the last section, we went through the screening criteria, took a deep dive. Now what we're going to do is take that screening criteria, take the rental application packet we received. I have a sample scenario set up, and we're just going to go step by step through the actual screening process and show you how this works. So this will be done a little bit different today. You know, we're gonna work off some like notes, and I have a lot of screenshots, so I didn't really want to do slides on this particular video. I figured it'd be a little more useful just to bounce back and forth here with what we have on the screen. So what we're going to be covering today, of course, is that screening process, how to utilize that resident screening criteria to evaluate the information that we received. We're going to look at how to calculate income. We're going to look at some of those verification tools like the rental history verification worksheet, the income or employer verifications, things along those lines. And then we are going to take our sample scenario and determine whether or not these are the tenants that we are looking for in our home. So down here on the screen, we have the screening process just kind of visually represented here. And these are the steps that we're going to be taking, that we're going to be taking in the screening process. And we're going to start out with, of course, receiving that application. We're going to move into creating and that application screening checklist so that we can start documenting all the information that we've received. We're going to run background checks. If they're denied right out of the gate off that background check, we're going to send them a denial letter. But if not, then we'll go through and verify income. We're going to calculate income. We're going to verify that rental history. We will send the approval letter if they're approved. If they're denied, we will send them a denial letter. We're going to collect any monies owed. And then from there, we're going to schedule that move-in, and we're going to work ourselves right into the move-in process. So that's the quick overview of what the screening process actually looks like. And all this is going to be represented on our application screening worksheet, which we'll get into here in a minute. Okay, so when an application is received, so when I get an application packet, there's a few things I like to look for before we even start getting into. One of those is going to be to make sure that everything's completed in full. I want to make sure I've received a rental application for all adults that are going to be living in a household. I want to make sure that any other occupants that are not adults are listed on the application as well. And I just mention I'm going to have one application for each adult. That's how I personally do it. And then I'm going to go through and read on the application. There's some questions on there, and I'm going to look at those questions to see if there's any immediate red flags. And those questions are: have they broken leases? Any evictions? Do they owe another landlord money? Any felony or drug-related convictions or charges? Any other current criminal charges that they're working through. And then if any of those things pop up, I'm going to get some more information out of them, because I don't want to spend a lot of time on screening an application that's just denied right at the gate. And if something pops up and I know there's going to be a denial, I'm going to give them the option to get their application feedback and just move on. If they want to move forward and try it anyway, more than happy to. But if they're currently in a bankruptcy and I know I'm going to deny them, I'm just going to tell them, hey, you're in a bankruptcy. That doesn't meet my criteria. I don't want to take your money. Here you go. No hard feelings. And that's usually the best way to go. Okay, so for today's setup, I've created a scenario here, and we have received a sample application, and we have some people moving in from out of town, I believe. Name is going to be James and his wife, Sally. They have a daughter named April, a dog named Mrs. Bones. James works in marketing at Coca-Cola, and Sally is a stylist at Great Clips, and they're moving into town. The property we're going to use today the address is 3501 Tulsa. We rent that for $2,000 a month. There's a $2,000 security deposit. They have gone through everything. They've signed and completed the rental application packet. They've paid the application fees, and they have paid the security deposit, which for me will reserve the home while we're going through the screening process. Of course, if they are denied, I will return that deposit to them, but the application fees are forfeit, of course. Okay, I'm going to bounce back and forth between screens here, so just kind of bear with me because we got a lot of forms here I kind of want to work with and show you as we're going through this. So the first thing is the screening checklist. So when I get that application and I've verified that the application itself, let's just show you, I got the applications here. There we go. I've verified that these rental applications are filled out, completed. They have all the information I need on them. They're signed. I have one from each adult. The first thing I'm going to do is I am going to start this application screening worksheet. So the first part here is I'm just going to fill this top part out here. I'm going to record the date the application was received. I'm going to record the property address for the property they're applying for, if you own more than one property. And I'm going to put their names. I'm going to put the monthly rent amount, and then if they paid their application fee, and I'll put a date on here as well, and then that security deposit when that was paid. Reason being is later on, if someone were to audit this file or there's some sort of investigation or whatever, this allows me to have all the information, because if you go back and try to remember dates and all that a year, 2 years from now, not very helpful, even 6 months. So here it's documented, have it all right there. This is kind of the cover sheet of the rental application packet. Now the first section we're going to be dealing with is, or the first item is the number of occupants. And what I do with this sheet is I literally start at the top and I work my way down. And by the time you get through all of this, verify everything, you have gone through that screening process that we originally looked at the beginning of this video. So we will start with number of occupants. So I'm going to go over here to the rental application. And I know that James is going to live there. I know that Sally, his wife, is going to live there, and I know they have a daughter, April. So I have 3 occupants. Let's take a look at what the screening criteria says. This is going to be my next step. And occupancy standard is going to be 2 persons per bedroom. And this does not include any unborn children. So if this is a 2-bedroom house, that means I can have up to 4 people living there. And and they only have 3, so in this case, they would meet that criteria. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go back the number of occupants, and do they meet? Yes, they do. If I do happen to have any notes in here, I'll pop some notes in here, but that's it. They met that criteria, that piece of that criteria. Now we're going to move on. Next, we're going to talk about pets, which I need to change that because I like to refer to things in terms of animals these days, but you guys know what I mean. So let's see here. They have Mrs. Bones. It is a 12-pound Shih Tzu, which is 8 years old. Next thing I'm going to do is I am going to look at my screening criteria on animals. And my screening criteria, which they have signed off on, states that I have a 2-animal maximum. There's a 20-pound adult weight limit per animal. I'm going to charge them a $200 non-refundable pet or a fee per animal, and a monthly charge of $20 per month, which we'll deal with in a lease. But in turn, they're not on the restricted breeds list here. And then I'll get an animal agreement set up as well. The nice thing about this is, again, because remember this rental criteria and information sheet, this is a signed document with their application. So they've already read this theoretically and have agreed to all these terms. So if they don't meet these, they have no one to blame but themselves if they get denied for one of these reasons. For our purposes, though, they do meet our animal requirements for this household. So I'm going to circle, or I'm going to mark yes on this particular requirement. If there's any notes here that I want to put, like for example, I could put 12-pound Shih Tzu or whatever the dog type is, or anything along those lines, and that would be fine as well. If you do use a notes, just make sure not to document anything that could be taken out of context on you later on down the road, like referring to any type of trait of a person, a behavior, anything along those lines. It could be construed as potential discrimination. My guess is if you're documenting stuff, you're not really meaning that, but who knows what people can read into later, especially when you're 6 months, a year, 2 years down the line, and there's no context for that situation. So just be careful of that. Okay, income requirements. So let's look at the income requirements first on our criteria. So the household income must exceed 3 times the monthly rent. I like to have the most recent paycheck stub, or if it's a new job, we can get an offer of employment or income letter as proof of income as well. Both of these folks are employed. He is at Coca-Cola. He makes $4,000 a month. She is a stylist at Great Clips. She makes $15 per hour plus tips. So given that this is a kind of a made-up scenario, I don't have actual pay stubs, but what we're going to do today is we are going to utilize employment verifications. So a couple of different ways this can be done. You can send this off to the company, you can fax it to them, you can email them, you can send it to the supervisor. They can complete it. Usually I use a paycheck stub if I can, a couple of them to verify, which would eliminate the need for this. But this will give us a good example to showcase the employment verification. Another thing I will do, not only with the employment verification, but the landlord, is I'll make a call and see if I can get somebody to talk to me about this information. And then I can have this form in front of me, and I'll just use that to document all the information, and then where the signature is or wherever else I'll put verified per such and such, and that suffices as well for screening. But for our case here, we'll just go through this. This is what we fill out on this top end, their signature. We put our information in here so that the employer knows where to return it, and then the employer is going to fill out this section down here. So they got the employee name, what their job title is, are they employed, when were they first employed, what's their wages, how many hours a week do they work, are they qualified for overtime, all that information so that we can get a good picture of their income. Same with Sally. And this is going to be important as well. Same type of information, gets paid hourly, $15 an hour plus tips, but they also give us, and this is what we need to calculate income, how much in tips they make on average per month. And of course, a lot of times if the tips are put on the pay stub, because sometimes, these days with the use of credit cards and debit cards and stuff like that, any tips, especially like at a place like Great Clips, that'll be reflected on the. It's not like they're taking cash home every day. That'll be reflected on the pay stub as well. So that is the employment verification forms, and we're going to use this in a minute to calculate the actual income. But let's talk about calculations. So in your resource section, you have this cheat sheet as well, and we're just going to use it as part of our conversation. There's basically 4 formulas, 4 numbers that you need to know when talking about calculating income. The first one is hourly formula, and that's basically if they get an hourly rate, there are 2,080 work hours in a working year. So whatever that hourly rate is, you multiply it by 2080 and you will get their annual income. Now the goal here is to make sure to get, because what we're doing, if you remember on our screening criteria, we say 3 times the monthly rent. So we're going to want to convert everything to a monthly formula. So once you get your annual, all you have to do is divide that by 12. And I'm going to keep referring back to everything that we get, figuring out what that monthly rent, or that monthly gross income amount is, so we can easily compare it to the rent to see if they meet that criteria or not. The next one you may run into is if they get paid weekly. There are 52 pay periods in a year. So again, gross weekly rate, multiply it by 52, divide that by 12 to get your monthly gross income. Biweekly formula. Biweekly means every other Friday, every other Wednesday, every other Monday, but there's 26 of those pay periods in a year. Again, multiply that gross rate by 26 and then divide it by 12. And you'll be able to tell by looking at One, it should be indicated on the verification, but if it's a paycheck, look at a couple pay stubs. You'll be able to tell real quick. If it's first 15th, first 15th, first 15th, that's usually semi-monthly. But if it's like every other Friday, every other Tuesday, every other Monday, something like that, you're going to be looking at bi-weekly. And so then multiply by 26, divided by 12, you'll have your monthly income. Same with the semi-monthly formula, except this is 24 pay periods, because again, this is 2 pay periods every single month, whatever it is, 10th, 25th, 1st, 15th, whatever the 15th, 30th, whatever those periods are. You multiply that gross pay period amount by 24 pay periods and divide that by 12 to get your monthly. Now, there's going to be some incomes like Social Security and maybe VA benefits or something along those lines, that those will be already just monthly because they only get them once a month, SSDI, things along those lines. So you don't really have to convert that. You already have the monthly amount. And in tips, what you're going to see here in just a minute as we work through the scenario, tips or overtime, it works the same. What we need is basically what is the average amount of tips in a month? What is the average number of hours do they work overtime in a week or in a pay period or whatever else? And then let's just say it's 10 at $20. Let's say it's 10 overtime hours a week at $20 an hour, whatever the rate is. If they get paid weekly, you would take your $200 that they get in overtime per week, multiply it by 52 to get that annual rate, and then divide it by 12. So you just want to get that converted to a monthly rate. Like in the tips, she got, I think on hers it said $500 a month. Well, we don't need to multiply that by 12, just divide it by 12. It's $500 a month is what we will count towards her monthly income in this particular scenario. Okay, so let me pull this back over here so we can look at their income real quick. Okay. So James, if you recall, he did $4,000 a month is what they put on his employment verification. There's no overtime. They didn't give an hourly or anything else like that. So if you want to, it's already converted into monthly income, but let's just say that they said you got an annual salary of $48,000 a year. That's simple. Divide that by 12 equals $4,000 a month. Let's say that instead of saying $4,000 a month, they gave you a biweekly calculation where you were looking at a paycheck stub. And his gross amount was $1846.15. He gets paid every 2 weeks. You would multiply that by 26, which equals $48,000 a year. Divide that by your 12 months to get your monthly gross income. Same with your semi-monthly. It'd be $2,000 a pay period times 24 pay periods, $48,000 a year, divided by 12 months for your gross period, monthly income per monthly period. Sally, she made $15 an hour, and she made her $500 a month in tips. So the 500 is already converted into a monthly income, so we don't have to really worry about doing much with that. But on the hourly, remember our hourly formula here is our hourly rate, which is 15 times 2,080 working hours times 2080, which means she makes $31,200 in a year. Now, we are going to take that annual and divide it by 12 months, which gives her $2,600 a month. We already have what she gets on average for her weekly tips, which is for $500 a month, her monthly tips, or average, because it was listed on her verification down here, $500 a month. And then from there, we know that that income is $3,100 per month. Okay, so let's jump over here to so James, he got $4,000 per month. Sally, with her tips, it was $3,100 $7,100 per month. So their total household income $7,100 per month. Okay, if their total is $7,100 a month, our screening criteria said they needed to make 3 times the amount of rent. And if you remember correctly, our monthly rental income was $2,000. So in order for them to live here, they have to make at least $6,000 a month gross income to qualify at this 3 times the monthly rent. They make $7,100, so they do in fact qualify for income. So we're just going to mark that yeah. So you see, I'm just going down the list here. I'm checking to see what my criteria says. I am then going to their applications to gather the information. I then go, this out of the way, I am then going over to the different verifications that I do, either the paycheck stubs or employment verification, whatever it may be, to verify, do my calculations, and then I'm coming back to the criteria, the application screening worksheet, to document that and indicate whether they pass or they do not pass. If they didn't meet the criteria, I'd mark no, and then move on. So on this one, I have check public records. The public records, when this was originally created, in some areas, you actually have access to these things. Let me see if I can find one here. Okay, so for example, this is the Shawnee County Public Court, and you can go in here and you can search court records and you can look up names and you can check that person out. Now, the benefit to this is that it is going to show like anything that's open. So maybe an open eviction is really what I'd be looking at here. But to be quite honest with you, this once upon a time was very useful. It may still be a little useful. Not all counties or jurisdictions have this available in this form that will show that. But most of that public record stuff is going to be captured in your background screening check these days. The screening reports have started long ago, including all of that. So, I mean, you could have this as a separate deal and look for yourself to see if there's anything going on, like maybe an eviction was just filed that maybe hasn't hit the background check, and that's how I'd recommend using that. But in terms of stuff that's already done and captured and on the books, usually it's on that background check. For our purposes, though, we are just going to say that we've checked this, that there are no issues there, and we're going to move on. Another one I do like to look at, though, is the Registered Offenders site. I've actually had mixed results on screening checks for this particular search. Let's see here. And you'll have links to these in the resource section. You'll have, well, not the Shawnee County Public Court, doesn't matter, but this sex offenders website does. So this is the FBI's National Sex Offender Public website. You can search. Let's just take a quick look here. You can search by name. You can search by location. You know, and I don't have a name, but let's look at. Oh, now let's do this. Let's go. Old address that I remember. I used to live in Kansas before I relocated to Arizona, so let's do. I don't have any luck here. Only states provide geographic addresses. I wonder if they're not. Okay, so that is not working. Let's go over here. I don't, for whatever reasons, the address radius is not working very well. Let's just check. Just trying to get an example pulled up here. There we go. So there we go. I mean, I just hit a zip code, and I'm just going to scroll through here real quick. This is all public records, but you can see in that zip code I put in, there are quite a few listed, and you can get some information on what's happening there. So you can put in a name and search for them that way. You can put in addresses. You can do all that. But this is a useful site for screening. And I recommend that you incorporate it as part of your process. Again, a lot of the screening companies will incorporate that as well, but I always double check. You just never know. Sometimes screening companies miss stuff too. Okay, so we have searched Sally, we have searched James. Everything is good to go there, so they have met that criteria. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the background credit checks here. So I have part of your resources. I have just a cheat sheet of some of the more common tenant screening services, their websites, how much they cost, and these are usually different packages, like a really cheap basic screening all the way up to the most expensive, all bells and whistles, all that. So, check some of them out. All of these are, everyone that I put on here are legitimate as far as I know. I wouldn't put something on here that I knew was junk, of course, but some of the more recognizable ones, Smart Move, I've used those. I've used Turbo Tenant, I've used Experian, and then some of these others I've heard of other people using as well. I haven't used them personally, but there's some different ones to search out here and, see what you like. Is this my Smart Move or is this Experian? This is TransUnion. I think this is the Turbo Tenant one, if I remember correctly. This is just a copy of the screening report, and it's just page one, but just give you an idea of kind of how some of these are laid out. It has the you got to be careful because this isn't necessarily a FICO score. This is like a renter's score, and you kind of need to know what the scale is, what that means, what's good, what's bad, those types of things. But usually the companies will kind of lay that out for you as well. So just keep that in mind. It will give you employment information, it gives you criminal record information, and it gives you it not only gives you a summary, but this thing is a 15-page report, and it goes through item by item. So all the trade lines, all the credit inquiries, everything was listed there. There was nothing of concern on this particular one. But this is just giving you an idea of what some of these things kind of look like and what you can kind of expect. Some of them are more colorful, some of them are arranged differently. But at the end of the day, they all give you a score. They all give you a list of open credit accounts and payment history. And that's ultimately what we're looking for. And let's take a look at our criteria. So for us, I have credit history must be rated positive with no judgments from previous landlords. I also have bankruptcy will only be considered if it has been discharged for 5 years and credit is positive post-bankruptcy. Some things that people will do is they'll put in like either a FICO credit score, or if they use the same screening company, they may use that score that they get from the screening company. You're saying, okay, well, if the tenant score is 600 and above, it's a good score. So they may say this tenant score must be at least 600. And if it's not, then it'll be denied. For our purposes, we have run both of them, and their credit screening report came back good. And there were no criminal issues that popped up either. But I want to take a look at the criminal background side of this because there are a couple caveats on that. So when I first started in property management, the criminal background criteria generally said that if there was a felony within 10 years, then that's grounds for denial. So what ultimately happened is, at a certain point in time, HUD got involved and said that this could lead to discrimination. It was called disparate impact. And what it basically meant was any policy that was in place that could inadvertently discriminate against a group of people. And what their basis was that they would say that the population, the percentage of African American males in prison was much higher than like a white male or a lot of the other races. And so they made the case that you can no longer just say felonies within 10 years because it had an impact against African American men, and therefore you could be found guilty of discrimination. So what they did say we could do, though, as landlords, is be specific with what type of felonies we're looking for, and they had to have the ability to affect housing or be a potential danger to other people, which made sense. I mean, if you have a felony DUI, you're probably outside at night, maybe not being able to drive and get to work. We probably don't have to worry about damage to the property just if they have a DUI and everything's good to go. So if you were to deny them there, whatever. But I think that's where they're kind of going with that. So what we were able to do is change the way that we outlined our criminal background requirements. And so now mine, as you see, and we get into this more into the rental criteria section that you guys have hopefully already done as well, but felony convictions related to arson, related to vandalism, sexual assault, registered sex offenses, the manufacture, distribution of a controlled substance will all be the basis for denial of the applications. And then I also go a little further and I say the felony convictions will be considered for 10 years from the point of completion of sentence. And the reason I do this is because I've had situations where they may have committed the felony 20 years ago. They were in prison for 19 years, been out for a year, and then they're applying. Technically, based off of, because we didn't have it specified, technically the felony happened outside of that 10-year mark. Now they're eligible to lease. But personally, at that point in time, we wasn't really comfortable with somebody that was just reintegrating into society, just fresh out of prison, really hasn't got their feet back on the ground, living in my home, especially for some of the stuff that I saw on the record. So that's why I got very specific on the time frame and then put in there the point of the completion of sentence. And maybe 10 years is too long for you. I don't know. This is just an example. Maybe it's 5 years. Maybe it's 3 years. Maybe it's 1 year. Maybe you don't care. But whatever it is, define that. That way, when the situation arises, you have a very clear line of what will be approved and what will not be approved. But Sally and James, they're good. Nothing came back. So we are going to mark yes on their criteria. So far, they're in good shape. They've met all of our criteria. Now we're going to take a look at our rental history verification. So we do have a rental history verification form here. And I generally look for, let's just look what our criteria says. Rental history. Okay, 3 years of rental history is required. Of course, if they own a home for the last 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, that's fine. If they can show that they owned a home, a lot of times it'll be on the credit report. That's good. Previous housing on the rental property must provide a good reference. No balances may be left outstanding to any previous landlord. I'm big on that. If they owe another landlord, if they pay that landlord off, if everything else looks good, I may make an exception if they pay that landlord off and it was, a certain period of time. If it was like from 5 years plus, and since then they've got their stuff together, and then they owe a balance, and they go and they take care of that landlord, and the landlord give them all their money, then I may give them a shot. But generally speaking, no balance left to any previous outstanding or previous landlord. They have to give correct notice, 30-day notice, or whatever that landlord requires. And if an applicant is in the process of being evicted, they will be denied. Why? Because if they're getting evicted from there, they're not going to be a good tenant for you. So that's why all of that is outlined the way that it is. Now, when it comes to verifying rental history, let's just see here. Yeah, I set these guys up. I didn't complete an actual form here for our example, but we'll go through that. But I did set these people up. They were at that property for 5 years, so they were there longer than that 3 years. Same landlord. I have a contact information. I got their rent. Why did they move? Job relocation. Okay, fair enough. Let's take a look at this form. Okay, so this is pretty simple. First, what I'll do is I'll try to call the landlord, and I'll do it over the phone, and I'll verify. I'll ask these same questions, and I'll use this form as documentation. And then down here, I'll put talk to whatever the landlord's name is via phone on such and such date. But if not, if I have to go through an apartment community or they want this sent over in writing, then I'll put the information at the top, the applicant's name, the address they were living at, and then I'll make sure all my information is down here and I'll send it over. If they're at an apartment community, I actually like to send this out like almost immediately because sometimes it takes them a couple days to get back with you, and sometimes you have to follow up with the communities. Keep in mind, a lot of apartment communities, if that person hasn't given notice, they won't even fill these out. Yeah, that can be a challenge as well. So you just have to look at different ways to try to verify that, maybe utility bills, things along those lines. If they're not going to give you information, you just do your best. The other thing that I will bring up that I've run into is that sometimes if something looks a little funny, like I have had it to where somebody has put an address down and they'll put the contact name for the landlord. I'll go on the county appraisers. I say Shawnee County because that's where I use it a lot at, but the county appraisers, and I will look to see who actually owns the house. I have had it to where somebody has put the actual address they lived at so it would match their credit report, but then the landlord name they had down was not the actual person that owned the house. It was somebody that was their friend, and they were covering for them. So they would either get evicted or whatever. But usually there's some other signs there. But keep in mind that stuff does happen. So if things look a little funny, dig in a little deeper, search it out. But did they give proper notice? Did they pay rent on time? Is there a balance owed to you? Were there any complaints? And so forth. The most important question, though, is would you re-rent? Because, sometimes you'll talk to a landlord and they'll, oh, well, this person's this person's that, they did this. Would you re-rent to them? Oh, yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, that's the ultimate question there, because sometimes landlords just don't want that person to leave, so they'll try to put a little negative spin on it too. I've run into that. But if they would re-rent, everything else is good, they don't owe them any money, it's a good reference as far as I'm concerned. And then, of course, I look on their credit for any type of property-related credit stuff too, like do they owe utility companies, things along those lines. Do they owe that landlord any money or any other landlord any money? I look for that stuff on the credit as well. And that's it. And hopefully if you have to send this off, they get it back to you sooner than later. But I always try to call first and use this as a tool to document my conversation. That's my first approach, my preferred approach on that. So as far as we're concerned, James and Sally, they're good. They've been in one location 5 years, everything checked out. Landlord said good things about them. Okay, so we have one more thing here, references contacted. Let's take a look here what that reference section looks like. So down here, we got our reference section in here. Got emails, we got phone numbers, got 2 references, 2 emergency contacts. The main point for me on the references is just to make sure that I have a good number, something that's working, a way to contact. And I call all emergencies. And basically, one, I want to make sure someone picks up the phone, and the person that does, that the name matches the number we get. But these, for me, are actually far more important if somebody skips out and you're trying to do like bad debt collections, you turn over a collection agency. These are people that agency or you can call to try to get in contact or get information about these people. It's more for skip tracing purposes for me. And usually when I call references, I just say, hey, listen, my name's such and such. These folks have applied at my house to live, and I'm verifying, the references. And I was like, are you such and such? Are you sample reference? Yes, I am. Okay, great. Just one quick question for you. If I ever need to leave a message with you to get in touch with these folks, is that okay with you? Yeah, no, that's perfectly fine. Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Have a nice day. So you've done a couple things. You've established the fact that you may be calling them later. You have verified that the phone number works and that the person that they say is the reference actually is the person you're talking to, or that they exist. And that's really how I deal with the references. Beyond that, that's it. It's simple, short, sweet. Because I mean, it's not like any one of those references are going to tell you bad things about them. They're always going to give glowing recommendations. You would hope if they're put down on there, you're hoping that that person isn't silly enough to put somebody down that's going to trash talk them. So to me, it just all that doesn't matter. It's a waste of time to go any further. You know, is the number good? Is the person the right person? And can I call you later? Yep. So we've gone through that, and we are good for James and Sally. So that is all the actual steps of the rental verification side, or the verification process, the screening process. Now what we're going to be talking about is kind of getting into more the decision side of it, the recommendation section. And what we have here is basically, is it approved? Is it a conditional approval? Is it denied? Conditional approvals, be careful with. If you were going to make any type of exception for a situation, make sure that you allow that same exception for everybody to screen moving forward. So a good one that you can easily standardize is the landlord one we talked about, where maybe and set a timeline and set your standards. But let's, like what I was talking about, 5 years ago they messed up, they stole that landlord some money. Since then, everything's looked good. They've got their stuff together, because that happens. People learn. People make mistakes. People learn. And they stole a little bit of money. Hey, if you go take care of this landlord, go get him taken care of, pay this balance off, everything looks good, I'll approve this application. And that would be the condition. You have to pay this landlord such and such and provide a letter from that landlord verifying that. That may be an idea of a conditional approval. But on the approved, what I love about this process is that this makes it extremely simple to determine whether or not this applicant is approved or not. You have already told them this is what you're looking for. They signed it as part of their rental application packet. You've gone through the screening process and you have verified that they do in fact meet all of those items on that criteria list. If these are yeses all the way down, this is approved. No ifs, ands, and buts. There's nothing else that comes into this. If something is a no, and you are going to make an exception for it, like the past money owed to the landlord, and again, be careful how you do that, then it's a conditional approval. If this is a no, if there's anything on here that's a no, and there is no conditional acceptance as part of your policy, it's a denied application. So if and when somebody ever says, you denied me because I belong to one of the protected classes, whatever it may be, race, religion, familial status, disability, whatever it is, you can say, nope, this is your screening criteria. This is your application package you turned in. You agreed to all these terms. When I screened you and did my due diligence, you failed on this one, and this one, and that is why you're denied. As simple as that. It has nothing to do with the fact that you're a single mother. Nothing to do with the fact that you're disabled. It has everything to do with the fact that you are currently in bankruptcy, you're in the process of an eviction, and you owe an old landlord $5,000. Here's the paperwork. Here's my proof. Here's my verifications. It shuts it down immediately. It eliminates anybody's ability to claim any type of discrimination. By following this, it allows you to develop your process that you want to follow, have that in writing, and as long as you follow those steps, you're good. You're golden. The decision is very easy. Now, a couple things. Let's start with the denial side. If they are denied, let me get a sheet up here, because I don't think criteria application. Bear with me 1 second here. There it is. and pull this over. If they are approved or denied, you're going to want to send a letter. Of course, send an email or call them and let them know, of course, but you're going to want to send a letter because you're going to want some sort of proof of service that you notified them. A documentation indicating you notified them, when you notified them, and what you notified them of. This is a letter of denial. Letter of denial is pretty simple. This is going to be in your resource section, and if you can download it, you can add, you can do whatever you want with it. But this covers all the basics. It tells them that they're denied, gives a date, tells them who they are. It says why they were basically denied. Monthly income does not meet our minimum requirements or is unverifiable. The rental history does not meet our screening criteria, whatever it is. Now, if you deny somebody based on information found on a consumer credit report, background report, you have to give them information on where you got that information from. So for like the one that we did, it was, covered up my video. The ones that we did, we got from TransUnion. So all you would basically do is just mark an X here. You'd be X here, the background criminal, or it could be multiple reasons too. But if any of them are this background criminal or credits, you're going to mark where you got that information from, and then it has their contact information because they will be entitled per the Fair Credit Reporting Act, FCRA, to contact that and get a free copy of their credit report to see what's actually listed on their report. Fair Credit Reporting Act. So that's your denial letter, and then you send that off. You save a copy in the tenant file, and then ultimately what your file looks like is you have your checklist, you have your application, you have the deposit policy if that's what you have, whatever your application packet was. You have you have the application that's filled out, you have all the verification forms on it, and then at the bottom of that you have your letter of declination, your denial letter or your approval letter. And there you go, that's your full packet. Were they approved? Yes, here's all my screening criteria. This is why they got approved. This is where they met everything. This is my backup. Denial, same thing. Letter of approval. Pull one of those over. Same thing. Call them, let them know they're approved and everything. And with the move-in process, you're going to send them that welcome packet as well, but send them the letter. Same thing, date, who they are. Congratulations, your application for residency is approved at 3501 Jasper. Here's the utility contact information or whatever you want to put on there. Here's my contact information. What this does is, especially if you're going to use the security deposit policy as part of your application packet, is that establishes the date that they are notified of the approval. And if you back that up with an email or a call or whatever, that's great too. But then if 3 weeks later goes down the road and they decide to back out and you hold their deposit per your policy and they say, well, you never told me I was approved. Well, actually, here's the email, here's the letter I sent you, and I called you on this date. It's simple. You have documentation. It's a non-issue. They can't even argue it. So that is the letter of approval. The letter of approval, same thing. If it's conditional, put an asterisk down here, congratulations, or somewhere, congratulations, your application for such and such. Condition, must provide a letter from such and such landlord that no money is owed as of this date. And then once you get that letter, put that in their packet as well. So approved. Guess what? What we just talked about is right here. Did we notify the applicant? Yep. When? There you go. There's your documentation that you called. Letter of approval sent. Yep. Or declination. Did you schedule a move-in date yet? Sure. And there you go. That's your cover sheet. That is your application screening process. That is everything. Okay, so just pop this back over in my notes kind of as we kind of wrap this up. We're actually doing pretty good on time, right about 50 minutes. So it's staying in my 40-minute to hour time span I like to be in. So we're right on time, right on target. Okay, so to kind of wrap this up here, the screening process. Again, start with that checklist when the application's received. Review the application, make sure you have everything you need though. But then use that rental application and criteria to evaluate whether or not they meet your standards. You saw if the marked yes all the way down the road, great. Verify, calculate your income, get your rental verifications, run your background check. I like to do the stuff that doesn't cost me money first, and you can arrange that checklist any way that you want to. It's whatever the flow and the process you want to do. But I do that because if they get denied beforehand, then I'm not spending the extra 20, 30, 40, 50 bucks on a credit report. They got denied for something else. I'm still owed the application fee, but now I get to keep more of it because I don't have to pay somebody else to actually get that background check. If they get denied before and you're going to deny them, let's just say based on income, they don't meet the income requirements, you don't have to run the background check. They're denied. You get to keep the application fee. Case closed, you move on. Save a lot of time, money, and headache. There's no point of verifying the other stuff if you already know they're denied. Of course, use all that information on the screening checklist to make your decision. If it's yeses down the line, approved. No's, multiple no's, denied. If there is a no on there that you are willing to make an exception for, it's a conditional approval. But from that point forward, you must give that same opportunity to anybody else that falls in the same category. So document that somewhere and be sure to be consistent with that, because that opens you up to fair housing stuff. Make sure to send your approval, your denial letter, because that establishes the date that it was approved or denied. One, for your security deposit policy, or two, just for the denial, because there is actually some cases out there that somebody has said, you never notified me that I got denied. You did that on purpose so that you would have time to rent to somebody else because I was such and such protected class. So again, if you follow these steps, send that out, it eliminates all of those weird little things that do actually happen out there. And that's it. That is the screening process and how you kind of run through that. So just some quick notes, final thought notes here. No matter how good your screening process is, you will always run into, at some point, a bad tenant, somebody that's you're gonna have to evict, somebody that is gonna cause damage to your property. The screening process isn't a 100% surefire way to eliminate that possibility. That's part of being a landlord. No ifs, ands, and buts about it. I have seen a lot of perfectly screened residents. I have seen, do the same type of damage as somebody that had all kinds of stuff on there. But my point is don't think just because you go through this that you're completely protected. But what it does do is it eliminates or greatly reduces the chances that you are going to run into a, quote, bad tenant, for lack of better words. And I don't know about you, if I can eliminate and deal with one tenant that does this to me once every 5 or 10 years, as opposed to dealing with somebody that does this to me every 2 years, well worth the money, well worth the effort, and just on the damage and the quality tenant front of things. Not to mention everything that this does to shield and insulate you from potential fair housing and discrimination complaints, which is where a lot of this is built in. Like we talked about in the fair housing module, we are building into our processes things that keep us out of trouble just by doing what we do. That's it. Nothing special. We don't have to remember anything special. We just have to be consistent with our processes, and it eliminates a majority of the fair housing stuff that somebody can actually try to claim on us. There you go. Yeah, over the next 20 years, 6 to 8 good tenants or 15 bad tenants. And I put $10,000 a pop on there. I've had tenants cost me $10,000 to $20,000 in lost rents and damages, and it can happen. So that's why it's so important to follow these processes, not only here, but even like with rent collection. If they don't pay rent, you get that notice to quit out. And if they don't pay within that time, get them out of there. The longer you wait, the more damage it's going to cause. Make sure to set up your screening criteria, your checklist, download those forms and those tools, everything that we have available to you. Make them your own, make it your own process, and use them, implement them. Because again, having that completed screening packet is going to be an amazing tool if anyone ever does try to make any type of claim, or if you just need to go back and figure out what's what. But documentation is always the key in property management. It's CYA. The other thing too is if your screening process isn't quite getting you what you want, tweak it. I mean, if let's just say that you're verifying 2 years of rental history, and you keep getting people that jack you over on rent or damage your property. Well, maybe you want to verify 3 or 5 years of rental history. Or maybe you want the last 3 pay stubs, or maybe you want a year of employment history, or maybe, I don't know what it is, but whatever it is, tweak your screening criteria, update the date on there at the bottom, just version 2 effective May 7th. This is the change. That way, if anyone later says, well, you discriminate against me because this person got a lower income ratio. Well, yeah, that's what my screening criteria used to look like. But as of this date right here, I changed that criteria, and that's what I've used moving forward. And that's the one you fall under. So again, that documentation, establishing timelines, that's where that becomes important. Tweak it until you find the things that work for you. Okay, so in the resource section, you're going to have, again, all the forms that we looked at, the screening criteria, the worksheet, the employment verification, the rental history verification, approval denial letter, those cheat sheets. I have a little, an Excel income calculation worksheet I'll throw in there, which is just, doing the same thing you do on paper, but you just do it in Excel and the calculations are already pre-built in there. But those are all going to be in there. Of course, you have the resources from the screening criteria, the screening criteria section that we did previous to this one. And that's it. That is the screening process. You should have, if you go through this, you should have a solid tenant moving into your home. And the next step in the management cycle is the move-in process, which is what we'll be getting into next. So thank you once again for watching. Of course, if you have any questions, make sure to join us on our weekly Q&A sessions if you're part of the Landlord Launch program. Of course, there's a Q&A section in the $11 Landlords program as well if you're a part of that. And then I'm more than happy to help you wherever I can with your individual situations, helping you build out your process, answering any questions that you have. So thank you once again, and we will see you next time.